And may I, on behalf of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, warmly welcome the officials from the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, and of course, the Estate Management and Business Development Company. My name is Wade Mark, Chairman of this committee. May I say from the outset that our committee, the Committee on Public Accounts Enterprises, has a mandate to consider and report to the House the following: the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of all enterprises that are owned or controlled by or on behalf of the state. The Auditor General's report on any such accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements, and, of course, whether policy is carried out efficiently, effectively, and economically, and whether expenditure conforms to the authority which governs that entity. Now, the purpose of our meeting today is to conduct an examination of the audited accounts, the balance sheet, and other financial statements of EMBD for the financial year 2015 and follow up on the implementation of the recommendations in our committee's 7th report from the 11th Parliament. Our committee is desirous of hearing of the many challenges or any challenges being faced by the key stakeholders at the EMBD in an attempt to determine some of the possible solutions to these challenges. Of course, our committee role is to, again, see how we can assist you to improve your delivery of services in an efficient, effective, and economic manner. Now, our proceedings is being broadcast live on the Parliament Channel 11, Radio 105.5, and of course on the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can also send their comments related to today's proceedings or inquiry to our email, parliament, parl101 at ttparliament.org, facebook.com/ttparliament, of course. And of course, we have Twitter at ttparliament. May I take this opportunity to invite our members of this committee to introduce themselves, and I may start on my right.
Hi, good morning. Rushton Pari, Vice Chairman.
Hi, good morning. Renuka Sagram Singh Suklal, Member.
My colleague.
Good morning all. Laura Lizamali Singh, welcome, Member.
Good morning, everyone. Amrita Devnarayan, Member.
Morning, Stephen McCrashy, Member.
All right. Thank you. And may I now invite the officials from the Ministry of Finance Investments Division to introduce themselves.
Good morning, Chair and members. Narayan Charan, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance Investments Division.
Good morning, Chair and members. I'm Sharon Mohammed, Director, Agro-Based Manufacturing Services Sector, Investments Division, Ministry of Finance.
Good morning, Chair and members. Lester Herbert, the Director of the Central Audit Committee.
Thank you. May I now invite officials from the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Good morning, Chair and members. Thank you all very much for having us here. I am Kumari Gulab Singh, the Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture.
Others?
Good morning, Neela Maraj, Acting Director, Agricultural Planning Division, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Beena Ramkisoon, Planning Officer, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Diane Rampadarat, Acting Assistant Director, Programs and Projects, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Anyone else? If not, let us now invite our officials from the EMBD. Can you officially introduce yourself for the record?
Good morning, Chairman and members. Shamir Rani Mohammed, Chairman, EMBD.
Good morning, Susan Tomwing Bailey, Acting Chief Executive Officer, EMBD.
Good morning, Marissa Ramnarayan Singh Zoro, Corporate Secretary, EMBD.
Good morning, Chair and members. Nadia James Reyes Tineo, Director, my apologies, Deputy Chairman, EMBD.
Thank you.
Good morning, Khalil Baksh, Project and Quarry Manager, EMBD.
Good morning all, Aisha Ruben Theodore, Director, EMBD.
Good morning everyone, Tradine Barrow Simon, Financial Consultant, EMBD.
Good morning, Chair and members. Eric Griffith, Director, EMBD.
Good morning, Chair and members. Nigel Sinath Singh, Director, EMBD.
Good morning, Joy Ram Logan, Senior Attorney at Law, EMBD.
Thank you all. May I take this opportunity to ask the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance Investment Division to make a brief opening statement. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, and its Deputy Permanent Secretary. So the Investments Division of the Ministry of Finance is responsible for the execution of the investment policy as prescribed by the Cabinet. The mandate of the division includes oversight, monitoring, and when necessary, the rationalization of government's equity holdings in commercial enterprises. The division acts on behalf of the Minister of Finance, Corporation Sole, and carries out the corporate function. This includes representation of the Minister of Finance at shareholders' meetings, the establishment of new enterprises, and the rationalization of the investments portfolio of the shareholder. We look forward to today's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. May I invite the Acting Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries to make a brief statement.
Thank you, Chair. Cabinet in 2002 agreed to the establishment of the Estate Management and Business Development Company Limited as a wholly owned state enterprise under the Companies Act 1995. The mandate of the EMBD was to manage the lands of Carney 1975 Limited transferred to the state and to stimulate and facilitate new business activity through the establishment of light industrial, agricultural and housing estates and commercial complexes. One of its major roles being to manage and develop lands formerly owned by Carney 1975 Limited. Currently, the EMBD is under the purview of the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, and is being monitored in collaboration with the Investment Division of the Ministry of Finance, which is guided by the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual. The EMBD receives an annual subvention from the ministry, and for fiscal 2023, that subvention allocation is $14,171,400. Presently, the EMBD continues its focus in following areas of national development to increase domestic food security through the agricultural land distribution program of the 2-acre plots with respect to VSEP workers of Caroni 1975 Limited. The government has agreed that these blocks of agricultural state land will be assigned to EMBD via head leases for the period of 200 years. EMBD's 7 agricultural estates are subdivided into 3,134 2-acre lots. As at February 2023, there are still 115 outstanding subleases remaining. Satisfy the residential housing lots required by Caroni 1975 Limited for ex-Caroni VSEP workers through development of residential sites, manage the operations of sand pits formerly under Caroni 1975 Limited, complete the rehabilitative work in fence-line communities, and engage in further purposeful rehabilitative infrastructural works. And just to share with the committee, the 7 sites that fell under the EMBD were Caroni, Edinburgh, Felicity, Jerningham Junction, La Fortune, Picton, and La Gloria. 2 major challenges affecting the EMBD are legal matters and staffing issues. Since November 2015, the board of the EMBD has focused on safeguarding the EMBD's interest in litigation matters. The strategy to manage the litigation portfolio comprises the engagement of experienced attorneys, conscientious pursuit or defense of the EMBD's litigation as applicable, and where prudent, settlement of claims. The court approved funding for EMBD's litigation portfolio covering construction matters, other matters, and industrial relations matter for fiscal 2016 to fiscal 2022, which totaled $160,136,943.14. For the 29 settled matters, excluding interest and costs, EMBD has saved approximately $369,328,583.94. The other major issues and challenge for EMBD is its ability to fill vacancies. But I would channel some of discussions later, and maybe the chairman could expand on the point of filling vacancies at the EMBD.
Okay, thank you so very much. I'll now invite the chairman, Mr. Ronnie Mohammed, to bring some brief opening remarks. Mr. Mohammed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to all again. EMBD is pleased to discuss with the committee issues related to the accounts of EMBD for the period 2013 to 2015. Since our last meeting before this committee in April 2017, EMBD continues to work diligently to contribute as a state enterprise to the national development agenda. Our core focus remains the management of the multiplicity of legal claims for monies allegedly due and owing in a cumulative value of approximately $4 billion, inclusive of interest and costs. Given the potential impact if these matters are left undefended, EMBD has been carefully managing the defense of EMBD's litigation matters and, where prudent, settlement of reasonable claims. As of March 2023, a total of 30 legal matters with an original cumulative claim of $995,565,677, that is just under $1 billion, have been finally resolved, either by way of negotiated settlements, court judgments, or withdrawals of claims in the sum of $374,617,457, resulting in a savings of $620,948,220. EMBD has also focused on the creation of a bespoke quarry business model after successfully obtaining requisite approvals under the Minerals Act. This was operationalized in July 2020 after 3 years of closure from 2017 to 2020. And although challenges have been experienced with the COVID-19 shutdown, a fluctuating market demand, competition from illegal quarries, and unfavorable weather conditions, EMBD has been able to pay all royalties, generate income, and has been recently identified as one of 6 mining companies to voluntarily participate in the Trinidad and Tobago Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative and was applauded for its commitment to transparency. Given the above significant work, it should be noted that EMBD is an extremely small state enterprise with a total of 32 employees at present and a management team of 5. Despite the usual constraints of operating with limited financial resources and human resources, the board and management are all committed to continued efforts and plans to increase the organization's efficiency, accountability, and transparency. We welcome the committee's comments this morning, and we look forward to responding to those. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And finally, the acting CEO, would you like to make a few comments or opening remarks?
We thank you for this opportunity to present our business case and hope that you'll be receptive to our achievements to date in spite of the challenges we have faced over the period of 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I may commence some questions for clarification. The first area I would like to have clarified deals with the unaudited financial statements for the financial years of 2015-16 to 2022. Maybe we can get some clarifications as to what are the challenges. Provide this committee with a status report on these outstanding financial audited statements. As the first area, I'd like to clarify. I would also like to have clarified what were the reasons for KPMG withdrawing from the audit engagement. I'd like someone from the EMBD to clarify that for me. That's the second area I'd like some clarification on. Then this new external auditing company that has arrived to replace KPMG, which is Grant Thornton Orbit Solutions Limited, whether they would be able to resolve some of the issues related to the disclaimer, right, of opinion for 2013 to 15, given EMBD's inability, and I quote, to provide required supporting documentation, as the documents may not have existed or they cannot be located due to the passage of time. That's the third area. And the final area to start the inquiry is what is being done to ensure the issues experienced with the previous auditors do not recur. So I do not know who would like to start off to provide this committee with clarification on those 4 issues. So I don't know if Mr. Mohammed or the Deputy Chairman would like to clarify.
Thank you, Chair. We will respond to your 4 questions in relation to the financial statements. I will respond to perhaps 2 of those, and our financial consultant will address the latter 2. So, by way of information and context, we need to understand first why we're here, and I guess why we're this late. So I would like to provide some context so that the committee and the public can have an appreciation as to the challenges we were faced with in preparing financial statements. It's an extensive response, but I ask for the committee patience while we reveal these facts in the public domain. On November 26, 2009, the financial audited statements for 2007 and 2008 audits were provided by KPMG and approved by the board with a qualification of emphasis of matter concerning CLICO EFPAs, and it was agreed that KPMG be reappointed as auditors for 2009. On the 26th of November 2009, a special general meeting was held, and the 2007 and 2008 audited financial statements were adopted by the shareholder. KPMG was further reappointed as auditors for the financial year ended 30th September 2009. 14th of April 2011, the 2009 audited financial statements was approved by the board with a qualification of emphasis of matter, again for the CLICO EFPAs. 13th of October 2011, an annual general meeting was held and the 2009 financial statements was adopted by shareholders. There was an observation by one shareholder that the financial statement lacked details on the government grants, and the auditors, KPMG, promised to address this issue in the 2010 financial statements. KPMG was reappointed as auditors for the financial year ending 30th September 2010. 10th May 2012, 2010 audited financial statements was approved by the board with an unqualified opinion. 14th June 2012, annual general meeting held and the 2010 audited financial statements was adopted by the shareholder, and the reappointment of the auditor was deferred for a date to be determined. 27th March 2014, special shareholder meeting held, and a motion to reappoint KPMG as auditors for the financial years ended 30th September 2011 and 30th September 2012 was adopted. I asked the committee to pay special attention that this was in March 2014 that KPMG was appointed for 2011 and 2012. November, December, at the change of the EMBD board in 2015, there were already 5 years of financial statements outstanding for the period 2011 to 2015. 27 January 2017. After numerous delays, the 2011 and 2012 audited financial statements were approved by EMBD with an unqualified opinion. The committee is asked to note that KPMG took 3 years to complete the audit for that period, that is between 2014 to 2017. March 21st, 2017, EMBD, by an open tendering process, invited all 72 auditing firms registered with the Institute of Chartered Accountants to submit proposals to conduct an independent financial audit of its operations for the period 2013 to 2015. 6th of April 2017, EMBD received 7 proposals in request to its RFP to ICAT audited firms, of which 3 adhered to the instructions of the RFP and recommended for evaluation KPMG, Grant Thornton, and PKF. 17th May 2017. Submission of tender evaluation report recommending the engagement of KPMG as the highest ranked bidder to provide auditing services for 2013 to 2015. 28 July 2017. EMBD Tenders Committee approved the recommendation of the engagement of KPMG to provide auditing services for 2013 to 2015, subject to negotiations of the fee to a maximum value of money. 14th August 2017, KPMG agreed to the reduce of the proposed audit fee from X to Y. If the committee so requires, I will disclose those values. 20th September 2017, annual general meeting held, and the 2011 and 2012 audited financial statements were adopted by the shareholders, and KPMG was appointed the auditor for the financial years 2013, 2014, and 2015. 11th of October 2017, EMBD signed KPMG letters of engagement with a completion of 10 weeks. 13 December 2017, KPMG requested the following in order to perform the required risk assessment and to ensure that the appropriate audit procedures are undertaken for key areas, which were never disclosed in their bid proposal dated April 2017. List of quantity surveyors used by EMBD. List of all quantity and surveyor reports for existing projects to assess development work in progress. Reasons for the dispute of the trade payable balances. Listing of all outstanding legal matters with status and reasons for dispute. Review of the approval and disbursement of the proceeds from a $400 million loan received from First Citizen Bank to determine breach of the loan facility, if any. List of all projects undertaken which have balances in the development work in progress. 23rd February 2018. EMBD confirmed with KPMG that approval was granted for KPMG to proceed with the examination of the list of quantity surveyors, and that EMBD would be willing to accede to a modified opinion as a means of protecting legally privileged matters while completing the audits. 28 September 2018. External attorneys with conduct of EMBD litigation advised on 27 September 2018 that EMBD should refrain from providing the requested disclosures to KPMG, as same would compromise the ongoing legal proceedings, and the Audit Committee and the Board agreed with same. 12 March 2019. KPMG submitted a sample disclaimer of opinion as a means of closing off the audit based on the information available, excluding the confidential legal privilege expert reports, which EMBD indicated it was willing to accept in an effort to complete the audits, noting that accounts would be restated after the completion of the ongoing legal matters. 13th May 2019. EMBD acknowledged its best efforts to furnish KPMG with all relevant information, and where information could not be provided, appropriate justifications for non-provision and a willingness to proceed with the proposed disclaimer opinion in an effort to conclude the engagement. 20th May 2019. On May 20th, 2019, KPMG expressed its understanding that the information they require to avoid a disclaimer will not be forthcoming, and that the going forward strategy would be to document EMBD's management's position with respect to the non-provision of evidence and to complete audit work on the other significant balances. This strategy was stated to have a duration of 3 weeks during July 2019. 15 July 2019. KPMG committed to return to EMBD office to complete required fieldwork, and the aim was to complete the draft financial statements for 2013 to 2015 by the 3rd week of August 2019. July 19, 2019. KPMG advised that KPMG European head office had indicated that the EMBD audit engagement should be suspended immediately, and that all KPMG staff withdraw until further notice. KPMG indicated that its client's due diligence had expired in July 2019, and in updating the due diligence, KPMG was advised by its European head office that to continue the external audit at EMBD, a meeting between KPMG and the forensic investigator would be required, as well as KPMG would require their own forensic specialist to perform appropriate procedures to verify the forensic audit conclusions conducted by EMBD. That would be at the additional cost to EMBD account. 6th August 2019. A total of 18 questions are centered on a PwC report. EMBD investigations and KPMG queries were received and again in an effort to complete these audits, EMBD completed same and received a non-objection from PwC to treat with KPMG. 26 September 2019. EMBD informed the Honorable Minister of Finance and its line minister of the chronology of events pertaining to EMBD engagement of KPMG to conduct the audits for 2013 to 2015 audits. This was now ongoing for 2 years. 24th October 2019, the Honorable Minister of Finance acknowledged the issues facing EMBD and stated that EMBD should make every effort to ensure that the audited financial statements for 2013 to 2015 are completed at the earliest possible time. 27 February 2020, EMBD reiterated to KPMG that the firm was conducting the forensic investigation into certain projects at EMBD and would make themselves available to meet with KPMG as requested. 13 July 2020, KPMG withdrew from the audit engagement, relying on issues that were cognizant since 2018, which were refuted by EMBD as being misleading and erroneous. 20th July 2020, EMBD informed its line ministry and shareholder of the withdrawal of the auditor. 7th May 2021, a special shareholder meeting was held to remove KPMG as auditor and appoint Grant Thornton Orbit Solutions Limited as auditor for the financial years ended 30th September 2013, 14 and 15. 17th December 2021, the board approved the financial statements for 2013 to 2015. 5th July 2022, an annual general meeting was convened via a unanimous shareholder resolution to accept the 2013, 14 and 15 audited financial results. Given the above status of EMBD external audits, EMBD acknowledges its responsibilities to submit audited annual financial statements, and to this end, we have taken the best as possible all steps to ensure compliance without compromising or unduly exposing EMBD and the state. The committee is asked to note that EMBD has completed draft financial statements for 2016 to 2022 and continues to submit its monthly and quarterly reports to the Ministry of Finance on a timely manner. However, it has become abundantly clear that audit engagements can be fraught with delays and possibly misrepresentations, despite the provisions of all schedules and justifications to the auditor in a timely manner, and duly informing when information requested cannot be provided. Chair, I hope that the chronology of events satisfies your explanation for questions 1 and 2.
Would you be able to summarize for us, Mr. Mohammed, what the company believed to have been the kernel or the core reason for the separation of KPMG in conducting and completing its contractual obligations as it relates to the audited financial statements for the periods that they were contracted to complete. You can share with us in summary what you consider to be the core reasons.
Chair, that will be expressing my opinion, but I think the committee may, and my opinion simply is that they did not act fairly and appropriately and ethically. I think the committee would be very mindful whether or not there's a role for this committee to engage ICAT in relation to the conduct of their members while performing audits, whether their members are operating in a fair and transparent manner, whether their members are making the appropriate disclosures where conflict of interest exists. And therefore, I will summarize it by saying that in my respectful view, when we look at these timelines, the company was simply misled by the auditor. Having recognized that and cognizant that we were not getting anywhere after so many years, we acted prudent and we took the very bold step, notwithstanding very difficult and numerous challenges we were having, to proceed with another auditing firm, because we recognized that we must move forward. And we manifested that by engaging Grant Thornton to produce financial statements for 2013 to 2015, which is now before this committee.
Now, those draft draft statements of accounts for the period that you have identified that was sent to the Minister or the Ministry of Finance, were they approved by the Ministry of Finance or the Minister of Finance? Those drafts up to 2021, I think you said?
So Chair, just to be clear, we're dealing with two things here. And one is the submission of the audited financials, which is before the committee for 2013 to 2015. In relation to your questions for 2016 to 2022, those are not required and subject to the views of the representative of the Ministry of Finance here to be reviewed or audited. Those are yet to be audited.
Okay. Could you share with us, Mr. Mohammed, you talked about some reduction of fees as it relates to KPMG in terms of what they were receiving before and what they requested through a reduction to receive after. Could you share with this committee what were these fees that they were initially receiving from the company, and then in order to pursue their mandate, they sought a reduction? And could you share with us what they were seeking at that time?
Chair, just to be clear, they were not seeking it. We were acting in the interest of the company by attempting and successfully negotiating a lower audit fee. So the engagement proposed audit fees was $620,000, and the organization was able to negotiate a discount, which got that down to $450,000.
Okay. And the final area I'd like to raise before I ask my colleagues to come in has to do with, do you think that the new external auditors, Grant Thornton, how soon, given all the challenges that you have outlined and the chronology of events that you have stated, how soon, in your view, can you share with our committee the period it will take to have those final accounts for the periods that are outstanding sent to the minister, to the ministry, and then to the parliament, so we can have them properly before us, so we can do the work that we are entrusted to do. Would you like to share with the committee, do you have a time frame for the final submission of these outstanding accounts?
Chair, I can give no commitment in terms of specific dates, except to say that EMBD is aggressively pursuing a pathway forward. We have landed on our laps with 3 years of financial statements with a disqualification and a disclaimer. Basically, we have to rebuild from ground zero, because you'd well imagine to move from what you have in 2015 to even a qualified to an unqualified would require perhaps extensive work, which is being addressed through the management letter. We have engaged and retained the requisite expertise. We are acting on the advice of the experts. We have developed an action plan, but one must appreciate that during 2023, trying to remedy, and in some instances, records don't exist for something back in 2016. And therefore, it becomes, in my view, exceedingly complex, because the objective must be to get an unqualified report. And what I sense from the committee, there's a level of urgency, but then you have to outweigh that on the quality of what's going to come before you. And what is coming before you, is that satisfactory for public accountability? And therefore, what we are working on is finding the best solution to the crisis that's before us and what we're faced with. What we do know is that subsequent events in each financial year improves our likelihood of moving from a disclaimer to a full audited report. And therefore, we will be taking all of the necessary steps, as I said before, to ensure that, one, we try to get there, and we get there in the shortest possible time. I will like to invite our consultant to perhaps expand a little bit on that, if you so desire.
No problem, yes, we welcome that.
Good morning, everyone. Just to expand on the point by Chairman Mohammed, where we are now formulating a plan for the way forward to complete our outstanding financial statements. We are cognizant of the points that Grant Thornton would have raised by way of their basis of disclaimer for opinion, things like documentation, unreconciled balances, the unavailable records in some instances. These issues, or these raised in the disclaimer of opinion, were aerated in their management letter as well, to which management has responded. So the plan is really for management to address the points, the high-risk points, because the points were ranked from low risk to high risk. It is management's plan to address these high-risk issues We are cognizant in the manner of documentation that does not exist, documentation that cannot be located, documentation that is still subject to legal privilege. We are cognizant of all of those issues, and therefore the plan is to use what we have as at 2023, where we have either settled or have had judgments on certain matters, and these matters are very pervasive and they impact several balances in the financial statements that would have led to the disclaimer. With those events, with those milestones that we've achieved in 2023 and the latter part of 2022, it is now permitting us to do some remedial work on our financial statements for 2022, go back to 2016. We are working in the quickest possible time to have the accounts brought up to speed, to reflect those balances, to see whether those decisions, those determinations in 2023 have any implication on our 2013 to 2015 financial statements, and if restatement would be practical at any future time. But that is where we are at in terms of remedying the management letter points that we would have received from Grant Thornton, so that we would be in a position to provide auditable accounts for the last 6 years.
Mr. Mohammed, you did startle me, and I'm sure the committee, and by extension the population, when you said words to the effect, and you can always correct me if I'm wrong, that it is your view and the view of the company that this particular auditing firm, KPMG, might have misled your company. And you even went on to indicate that you would like our committee to consider approaching ICAT, right, to address some of these issues that you have raised, and to ensure that their members act in what you may call a fair and reasonable manner. Now, if you could just elaborate on that for us, because as I said in the initial statement which I made, our committee is here to assist and to help the EMBD to better perform and to better deliver services to the people of Trinidad and Tobago in a very efficient, effective, and economical manner. So if you can just briefly guide us on this one, I think the committee would welcome your input again on that matter.
I would preface that by saying time does not stop. And the fact that a firm takes 3 years on an engagement to complete 3 years' work, then it does not allow you the opportunity to accelerate at the pace you need to accelerate at to get current. And therefore, based on all of the timelines that I articulated to this committee, it is very reasonable for one to come to the conclusion that the conduct, in my view, of the auditor was simply not acceptable. There were very specific timelines that the auditing firm and milestones that they should have met. And I think it is highly inappropriate where you have the placement of staff, the withdrawal of staff, the constant review of schedules that you would have inspected before and re-inspected, and you use, in my view, excuses numerous, and that perhaps could not withstand scrutiny, to mislead the organization that there was a real interest to finish this in time. The fact that we got to 2019 and we could not move, is simply not acceptable. And therefore, I say to the committee, we have no control over the auditor, but auditing firms do subscribe to an organization. And let's be realistic. I mean, we have seen this thing called financial statements delivered by firms to at times misrepresent the truth of information that exists. And we do have precedent of that with HC on CLICO. And I'm saying that we do not have the authority. However, what we did do as an organization is to act at some point in ensuring that the auditor was removed, and we simply pressed ahead in finding a replacement and producing to the best of our ability what we can.
All right, I'll now invite Amrita Dinarayan, and then I'll invite Mr. Parry and then Mr. Scotland.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning again, everyone. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for giving us such a detailed outline of the timelines with this delay of audit. I just want to dial back a little bit just to seek some more clarity. At one point, correct me if I'm wrong also, at one point while you were going through the timeline, you indicated that KPMG requested some documents that was outside of the bid proposal, correct? Yes. Right. Could you elaborate on that, please?
So you would be referring, member, to where I quoted specifically in relation to 13 December 2017, and those related to the list of the quantity surveyors used by EMBD, list of all quantity surveyors reports for existing projects to assess development works in progress, reasons for the dispute of the trade payable balances, listing of all outstanding legal matters with status and reasons for dispute, review of the approval for disbursement of the proceeds from a $400 million loan received from First Citizens Bank to determine if any breach of the loan facility. And finally, list of all projects undertaken which have balances in development work in progress.
Okay, and what you're saying through you, Chair, is that EMBD was not able to provide those documents. So is it that because these documents that were requested were outside of the bid requirements, so that was outlined in the bid proposal, EMBD refused to submit those documents? I'm just seeking clarity. I'm not drawing a conclusion just yet.
I would strongly suggest that we don't use the word refuse. We facilitated as much as practically possible. What we saw coming out of the initial scope was another scope that the auditor placed on us. And that scope started to manifest into a gigantic scope where the auditor was saying, notwithstanding our independent expert reports, which were readily available, they were saying, no, we want to do our own, and you would have to fund that. And therefore, that did not provide any reasonable justification, or they did not provide any reasonable justification as to saying, well, why are you not accepting what we have? Because these are independent experts. Why are you replicating what exists and to achieve what? Because all of that would drive cost and further delays.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, just tell me who the independent expert was. Was it a firm? Was it the Ministry of Finance? Who was it? Staff of EMBD, who was also advising the auditors at that point in time, KPMG, that what was already available should suffice, and you shouldn't move towards trying to expand the scope of the works that were to be completed.
Yeah, a significant portion of the reports that they may have required would have been available by legal proceedings. Some was privileged, but however, those experts were experts that we found competent and capable to represent the organization or to be experts in legal proceedings. And therefore, they were all independent experts in their respective fields.
Okay, so I understand. So then tell me, with respect to, so these were requirements outside of the bid proposal, but after the bid proposal, a whole procurement process would have gone through, would have taken place, and you would have reached a point where you would have signed a contract with the auditors. And in order to sign this contract with the auditors, you would have terms and conditions of this contract, right? So at that point in time, were the auditors violating or going outside of the terms of conditions of the contract that was agreed upon?
And what I said before, all of these came to us outside of the initial scope of the audit. So these all came after the engagement, after the signing of the contract. The engagement commenced, the audit started, and we started to get these, numerous things coming from us, never seen before.
Right. And I'm just trying to understand, as far as you understand, what was the justification for asking for these additional documents from the auditors? Because I'm sure that through your experts and through you and your team liaising with the auditors, you all would have clearly wanted to seek some sort of justification as why it is you are asking for these additional documents, which is clearly outside of the scope of the original terms and agreements of the contract.
Defer to.
Through you, Chair? Yeah.
Hi, morning again.
Good morning.
We would have had terms and conditions, and under one of the terms and conditions, and some of these terms and conditions can be very broad, right? Where the auditor should have, and I'm not quoting it verbatim, the auditor should have unrestricted access to the records of the company. We would have provided unrestricted access insofar as possible, limiting it to those records that were part of legal proceedings. So items such as forensic reports that would have formed part of legal proceedings, expert reports, quantity survey reports, we would have, KPMG would have communicated to us that they would require those reports to validate some of our balances on the balance sheet, which we would have informed them in writing, and on numerous occasions, these matters are subject to legal privilege. EMBD would have also sought independent legal counsel, which we would have received in writing, stating that EMBD would significantly prejudice its matters should it provide these requests to the auditor, and that these requests, in the opinion of our legal expert, were not common. It was not common for an auditor of financial statements to want to request these type of QS reports, expert reports, forensic reports, and then further use those reports to now perform their own forensic reports, knowing that these matters and the reports that are related to these matters are for ongoing matters that are before the court. So we would, to answer your question, and I hope I did, we would have sought independent legal counsel on this, and we would have gotten a written response, which we would have communicated to KPMG on this. And that's why KPMG, at some point in the chronology detailed by our chairman, would have indicated in writing that if these reports and these documents are not forthcoming, and that they understand it would not be for the reasons provided by EMBD and our legal experts, they would be put in a position where only a disclaimer of opinion could be issued because they did not have purview of what they've asked for. And EMBD, to protect ourselves and to protect our matters, would have accepted that this is the way forward, and that is what we were anticipating to come out of the rest of our engagement with KPMG.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mohammed, remind me why again KPMG requested a forensic audit? I'm trying to understand why, because they started up with you all had the procurement process. You all contracted them. Terms and conditions were signed on to. Then they started to go outside of the terms of conditions, widen the scope, because at some point they would have indicated that there is need for forensic audit. Is that correct?
They were aware that we had a forensic audit taking place.
Mm-hmm.
We were not clear by KPMG as to why they needed a forensic audit, because they were retained to perform an audit.
Okay, I understand. So in the midst of all of these additional requirements being requested, which clearly violated the terms and conditions of the agreement or the contract between EMBD and the auditor, why at that point in time you all didn't just seek to terminate, since it was a clear violation of the terms and conditions of the contract, and save at least 3 years from this process being dragged on?
So do appreciate when those started to come at us, we were already in 2019. So you're already way behind. At that point, and as Katie clearly said, we were prepared to accept from KPMG a disclaimer. And that, for us, it was a pathway forward. We were stunned when they basically withdrew from the engagement. Because all of our discussions with KPMG, and subject to anyone on the team correcting me, is basically we have an audit that's evolving. Facts and matters are coming to the table. We do want to keep pressing ahead. Tell us what you can provide, but please produce something. We eventually got to a point where they were not prepared to produce anything.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The reason why I am asking these questions, because it's important for not only myself, but the committee members to understand what exactly went on. Because usually when an audit firm withdraws from an agreement or an audit arrangement, it usually is for very, very serious issues. And some of those issues is that their rules of independence have been compromised. They have issues with the competency and integrity of the management, and also there is risk of material and pervasive fraud, right? So those are some of the primary reasons, according to international auditing standards, why an auditor usually withdraw from an audit arrangement. So this is the reason why I was asking these questions. I still am not able to form a conclusion, but Chair, if you allow me to just ask one more question with respect to the records. I heard the financial consultant and also you, Mr. Mohammed, allude to the fact that records did not exist and so on. What period exactly records did not exist?
Specific to
getting the audit done.
Correct, which we're referring to 2013 to 2015. So you can speak about that period, and that is to say that certain records did not exist. Now, if you asked, and you did ask the question, we have not commenced 16, 17, 18, and thereafter. So there's always the possibility that maybe some records don't exist. So I can speak to as to what exists or did not exist for the period that the committee is examining the reports that is before them.
So for that period, what documents did not exist?
I would
Sure.
The documents that did not exist, and we can appreciate that auditors work on a sampling basis. So it's not to say that all documents do not exist or all documents cannot be located. It would be the documents that were specifically related to the sample that they would have pulled, and their sampling is random. The records that did not exist, and we use the term did not exist, it's also that it may not have been able to be located. Most of those records were centered around what we call our trade payables and the development work in progress. So items such as invoices from contractors, items such as RFP proposal, the initial, they walk it through the entire process. For this particular transaction, I want to see the request for proposal. I want to see the board minutes. I would like to see the award of contract. I would like to see every single IPC. I would like to see every single certification from your engineer. I would like to see all the check stubs. I would like to see copy. That is the sort of information they would have asked for. In certain instances, just for an example, they would have requested maybe 10 documents that relate to one transaction, and we have been able to provide 5. The other 5, we may not be able to locate an invoice. There may not have been a contract of award or an award document, or the award document may have been presented. It was just not in the format that the auditor would expect to see that document. And that sort of lack of documentation does lend itself to the litigation matters that we have ongoing now. So those were the sort of documentation issues that we would have had in our inability to provide documentation. Substantive procedures can also be done where if we can't find A, we will take B. We would have also engaged in those certain things where if we cannot locate a copy of a check, we'll provide the bank statement to show that the amount did come out of EMBD's bank account.
Okay, so then from what I understand, it's not an absolute missing of records or documents. It's just based on the sample that was requested
Correct.
from the auditor. You all were not able to provide a percentage of what was requested.
Correct.
Mr. Chair, I would pause at this point.
Thank you. EMBD, I would like just to ensure that we understand in real time what is happening here. Through you, Chair, tell us, what is the time frame that you're actually engaging the auditors relative to the providing of the documents? What is the time frame? What is the year that this is happening in real time?
Members, so the explanation is I've provided.
No, just give me the years. In other words, when is this conversation happening?
2015.
2013
to 2015.
Your board was not there in 2015,
That's
was it?
correct.
So tell me, hold on, listen to the question. What is the time frame that the board as constituted is actually engaging the auditors? 2016, 17, I want to know, what is that time frame?
Okay. So it's 2017 to 2019.
Good. But in that engagement, they are asking for documents from when?
2013 to 2015.
And having engaged, what was the period, Chair, through you, of the engagement with the auditors from 2015 onwards relative to the providing of these documents? How long did this engagement, this back and forth, how long did it last?
So just allow me 1 minute, please.
So they were engaged from October 2017 and withdrew.
When they got appointed here. So they got appointed in. Yeah.
September 2017.
So on September 20th, 2017, by way of annual general meeting, the shareholders approved the appointment of KPMG for...
That would be the reappointment because...
The reappointment, sorry.
So, and then tell me, what were the reasons given by KPMG for their withdrawal from the auditing arrangement? What was the reason given? Why did they tell you, look, we are no longer continuing, because that is what happened. You did not fire them, they withdrew. Am I correct?
Well, they withdrew and then we had to remove.
Right. What was the reason provided for their withdrawal? Chair, through you, please.
Yeah. Take it through here and direct it to Katie. So according to the summary I have here, it says 19th July 2019. Yes. KPMG advised that KPMG European head office had indicated that the EMBD audit engagement should be suspended immediately and that all KPMG staff withdraw until further notice. KPMG indicated that its client's due diligence had expired in July 2019, and in updating the due diligence, KPMG was advised by its European head office that to continue the external audit at EMBD, a meeting between KPMG and the forensic investigators would be required, as well as KPMG would require their own forensic specialists to perform appropriate procedures to verify the forensic audit conclusions conducted by EMBD. This would all be at the additional cost of EMBD.
Chairman, so up to now then, we have not been given a rationale for the withdrawal of KPMG. Have you? What you have said is the European office there as well, and I will paraphrase, let us re-engage for some other aspect, but of course, EMBD will bear the cost. What was the reason? Chair, we must know why it's an internationally acclaimed firm with obviously European headquarters. What is the reason given to the people of Trinidad and Tobago for their withdrawal? Have they given a reason?
Chair, we would like to caucus and perhaps provide a written response if one is available.
If one is available.
If one is available.
But to date then, EMBD chair cannot tell us if KPMG gave a legitimate reason, for their withdrawal. All right.
It would suggest,
yes,
based on what I have here, that KPMG received an instruction from somewhere.
You can receive an instruction, but behind the instruction, Chair, there has to be a reason for the instruction. Up to now, and we are not at all faulting EMBD, we want to know from you why your auditors who you are paying and why they withdrew. Chairman, I don't want to beat the dead horse. I want to look at the letter, the disclaimer opinion from Grant Thornton, your new auditors, and they've said that the company, the basis.
Just to follow up on what you have said.
Yes, Chair.
Mr. Mohammed, is there any correspondence or correspondences that would have been written to the EMBD from KPMG as it relates to its withdrawal or the company's withdrawal here? Is there any written correspondence that you have, the company that is, in its possession, considering that very question that Mr. Scotland has raised, that you can provide to this committee so we can have a better understanding of this matter?
I'm advised that such a document exists, and subject to the committee instructing us, we will provide.
Yes, can you provide that to this committee, please?
Yes.
Okay.
As well as our response to said.
Yes, thank you very much. Mr. Scotland, continue, please.
The document I'm reading from is the EMBD's financial statement for the year ended September 30th, 2015. And if you go, Chairman, to page 3, under the rubric basis for disclaimer, your auditors say to you, the company was unable to provide the required supporting documentation to substantiate the existence, completeness, accuracy, valuations, allocations, and obligations, plant and equipment development, work in progress, and other trade receivables related to related party transactions, cash equivalents, etc., and other payables as at September 30th, 2015. And also the occurrence, completeness, and accuracy related to income and expenditure for the year ended September 2015. Has that been in any way ameliorated? Has it been, have you been able to assuage or arrest that situation? Yes. Anyone. Chairman, it's contained in the document that was received in our package. It is titled the Grant Thornton Orbit Solution, and I'm referring to page 3 under the rubric Basis for Disclaimer of Opinion.
Yes, I can answer that question.
Yes, please.
The issues raised, that is the basis for disclaimer of opinion, of course, relates to the transactions that occurred in 2015, and where balance sheet items, possibly even items from pre-2015. At present, yes, we have ameliorated many of these issues where our record keeping or databases or digitization of records are available. Our financial statements are prepared in a timely manner. All our schedules are ready and in an audit-ready condition. We would have taken those policy decisions in and around 2019. So several of these issues in terms of accuracy, allocation, rights, and obligations, speaking to things such as our leases, the lease of our head office, we are in the process of regulating some of those issues. And for several of the other issues as it pertains to documentation retention for cash, income, trade payables, we have ameliorated and mitigated those issues from 2019 to present.
Chairman, I am happy to hear that. Chairman, I'd want to go under the heading of the procurement unit and ask the EMBD. We know that you do not have, can we confirm that there is no procurement unit now existing in the EMBD? Is that so? Through you, Chair?
I can confirm that there isn't the existence of a unit, but we do have personnel responsible for procurement.
Chairman, if we look at our paper at page 6, because it's important for us to put it into the context, is it that your value of purchase orders from 2020 to 2022 really reduced by almost 50%? In 2020, it was $627,202 relative to 112 purchase orders. In 2021, there were 92 purchase orders, the value of $259,928. And in 2022, there were 66 purchase orders, again going down to the value purchase orders of $325,136. Is it then that really, maybe in light of the trend, is it that a unit may not be appropriate, but you have a person or you have a system in place for procurement?
Remember, you're absolutely correct. One, in terms of the number of purchase orders and the values stated. And that is correct. I mean, when you look at EMBD in its present form, the values of our purchases are insignificant. And therefore, what we've done is through the OPR, and I'm delighted to say that we invited the OPR to make presentations to the board, to the management. We've also facilitated training of our personnel with OPR. We've also sought guidance and assistance using their handbook in terms of the methods we can use for procurement. We have to be realistic in terms of the context of staffing and the cost of staffing procurement units. And if one does a simple extrapolation, you would recognize that the staffing and the cost for staffing would far exceed the value of the purchases that the organization is doing on an annual basis.
Chairman, is it that the committee can take it that even though there is no official procurement unit, the EMBD is ensuring that there's a procurement process that is manned by someone? And have you ensured that there's no breach of any regulations going with that modus operandi? You've sought, I know you have senior attorneys present advising you, and you've sought advice on that, have you? And ensured that we are in no breach of any regulations?
As far as I am aware, there's been no breach.
Could you ask legal maybe to give us some sort of idea or some sort of comfort that that is indeed the position? I know you have your legal team here. Madam CEO.
As far as our purchasing are concerned, it has really boiled down to just purchasing regular items on a daily basis. But where there are contracts, minor contracts, it's always reviewed by our legal team. Also, we'll have the input from not only the legal team, but independent expert and also the financial representative. So to date, we have not had any breaches to the small contracts which we have issued. The other purchases which we do on a regular basis, stationery, advertisement, etc., those do not fall under, where you need legal advice. It's just to follow the procedures outlined in our tender rules and policies or be guided by OPR handbooks.
It seems that may not be the best, and we've heard from them. Chairman, I would want to give way to someone else and till I come around. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mr. Mohammed, in reviewing several of the responses that EMBD sent for us, there's a common trend in prefacing some of the responses that, and if I could just paraphrase, based on the available data. And that tells to me that data is missing somewhere. I want to get a feel from you or your team in terms of, because the responses are saying, and it's telling me that there's some data that's not here. Whatever we have, we are giving you a particular response. Is there or was there a substantial situation where volumes of data was missing that you could not respond clearer or wider at any point in time to some of the queries that were being asked?
Thank you, Member. What we can say is that EMBD, in compiling the responses to the substantial questions that were received in respect of the period 2013 to 2015, is that the requests would relate to items that might have been requested as well in the audit for the particular period. What we attempted to do, given the requests from the public accounts, to meet the accountability threshold to this committee, we went further than what would have been required in the audit. With Grant Thornton, when they received certain responses up to a certain threshold, that those documents could not be located. Hence the reason we reached to the position of the disclaimer of opinion. What we've done in answering your questions is tried to overcome that. And we conducted searches, so we were able to give you as much information on the issue as possible.
So documents were indeed missing?
Yes.
Okay, if you had to quantify for this committee in terms of the volume that would have impeded your ability to answer, I guess, our questions and even those to the auditing firm at that point in time, can you give a quantity? Was it, 5%, 10%, 20%, 50% of the documents?
It would be difficult to quantify. What I can say is, for instance, as Kadeen would have mentioned, something substantial as our trade payables and development work in progress. It represents over 75% of the balance sheet. So any items that would be missing or affecting that,
it would substantially affect the entire balance sheet.
Would the fact that that is a huge red flag item?
Yes.
What would have the EMBD done at that point in time? Because clearly you're talking about trade payables, invoices, bank statements. Upon realizing that these things are missing, and I'm asking you probably did KPMG red flag the fact that those things are missing and it cannot be provided as well? What action did EMBD take at that point in time? Because clearly these are significant documents. It's not there. Somebody had to remove them, hide them, put them somewhere. What action did you take at that point in time when you realized that?
So a variety of measures would have been taken. First of all, there are always third-party ways of obtaining documents. So for instance, for bank statements that cannot be located within the entity, you can make the request of the financial institution. We would have also tried different means. For instance, if a particular contract is not, we can't locate the actual physical copy, cross-reference checks would have been done. Say, for instance, if there were monthly reports that were submitted to the board in 2013, 2015, we would have checked the board minutes in order to cross-reference, and try to trace the documentation. But as you could imagine, I mean, that is a difficult exercise in its own. So those are the measures that were implemented in respect of the documentation for 2013, 2015. What we can say is that with respect to documentation from 2016 onwards, what has happened is that there is a system in place within the company that we do have tracking of documentation now. There is monthly reporting is reinforced now in terms of departmental reports to the board and the CEO's office that are able to say what is the status of matters in a real-time basis. Contracts, there's a monthly return of award contracts that is regularly submitted every month to the Ministry of Finance and our line ministry, so that it records now from 2016 onwards every single issue in terms of awards of contracts that are issued.
Do you think at any time that malfeasance had occurred in terms of those documents that were missing? And if that be the case, would you think it prudent at that time that perhaps the police, the fraud squad, any other type of security agency get involved at that time? Because I get the impression that it's all intertwined into what happened with KPMG and the fact that there's such huge delays in the financial reporting of the EMBD. In your board's view, do you think malfeasance had occurred? And if so, was the intention, or was it ever thought about to get the police involved at that point in time?
In respect of the missing documentation, we can't make at this point in time, we don't have any evidence to say that there was any malfeasance or the intentional removal of those documents. What we can say, though, and it is in the public domain, is that there are certain allegations in terms of conspiracies and intentions to defraud the company, which are being ventilated in ongoing legal proceedings, and some of which have been judicially determined.
And at no time was the thought of getting the police or the fraud squad involved?
What I can say, there has been an investigation by the Anti-Corruption Investigation Bureau in EMBD, which management is fully cooperating with.
Last item on that. Do you think that whole issue of the documents and so on would have been substantially material in terms of KPMG's European head office instructing them to withdraw?
Going back on that, what I will put members to in the chronology is that KPMG has been EMBD's auditors since 2009. They have been our auditors, EMBD's auditors, for every single year from 2009 up to the 2013 audited financials. So, to my mind, and we have indicated that we will be supplying the reasons that were given by KPMG for the withdrawal.
Thank you, Chair. Oh. No, thank you. Okay, yes, so as Chair for 2 minutes, I call on Member Sagram Singh Suklal.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, EMBD, and welcome to all. So, this morning, a lot of discourse, of course, I've heard a lot relative to the way forward, financials that are outstanding, the factors that have been impeding or preventing EMBD from, of course, submitting financials for 2016 onwards. But let's remember, again, as all members would have already alluded to, the purpose of this meeting is for us to, as a committee, to consider the documents that are before us. And that, of course, is these 2015 audited financial statements. Now, with that being said, I want to go to page 26 of the 2015 audited financials. And I have some questions relative to the statements. So I started by indicating I understand what are the issues facing and moving forward. But again, I want to come to what is presently before the committee. Now, page 26 of the 2015 audited financials reads, especially when we look at contingency liabilities. It says the company has ongoing High Court matters after the reporting period that relate to claims from contractors for outstanding monies due for services rendered of approximately $547,709,681. As at the date of issue of these financial statements, the company continued to defend these matters. Now, at page 26 of your audited financials, you also stated, EMBD also stated in written submissions entitled Summary of Settled Litigation Matters from Fiscal 2016 to Fiscal 2022, the number of legal matters being 29. Out of 29, 16 were construction claims. This was for the period of 2016 to 2022. Now, based on that, do you have the figures specifying those litigation matters which were brought in 2014 and 2015? Yeah.
Remember, just 1 sec before we respond. Yeah.
Member, can you just remind us of the second reference that you're using?
The second reference, if I go to your page, if you look at page 26 of your financial statement.
That's fine, we have that one.
Right, page 26 is just reading the company, so where we look at contingent liability, paragraph 20.
Yes.
And so I'm just referring to those, your contingent liabilities in this audited financial statement, right?
Yes.
And what I'm asking now, so in looking at that, do you have the figures specifying those litigation matters which were brought in 2014 and 2015?
Not at present.
Remember, just to ensure that we interpret, because you did speak of two things. One is note 20 to the financial statements at page 26.
Right.
But you did refer to a second submission. Can you please remind us?
It's at the same page 26. It's just two paragraphs.
Two paragraphs.
Paragraph 20, it's broken into two parts.
We have that, which we can speak to.
So, member, would...
Let's speak to the second. Some second. Let's see if she takes it. Yeah? Yeah, just like it, right?
Okay, so if I may assist, right? So for the period 2016 to 2022, do you have figures specifying those litigation matters which were brought in 2014 and 2015?
Yeah. So,
I can. Yeah?
I can. So member, we can provide a summary which we do have prepped here, and further particulars if required. But you may recall in my opening statement, I referred to our savings of almost $21 million. But just for reference, construction matters, 17 of those, total claim excluding interest and costs, and I'm just going to tighten up the figures here, 992 million, amount settled at 373 million, a savings of $619 million. Other matters, 7 of those, claims excluding interest and cost, close to $1 million, amount of settlement, $670,000, savings of $31,000. Industrial relation matters, 6 of those, total claim, $2.6 million, amount of settlement, $934,000, savings of $1.7 million.
And that's at page 10, entitled The Summary of Settled Litigation Matters. That's what you're referring to? Or you're just giving me a general...
I'm summarizing.
Okay.
Here.
Thanks.
So therefore, we refer to 30 matters, which amounted by way of the claim excluding interest and cost of almost $1 billion, being settled at $374 million, and again I repeat the savings of $621 million.
So for matters, so just in a nutshell, in case if I missed it, so for matters resolved, and more so for the benefit of the public, what would the cost EMBD inherited on account of legal fees? What would the cost?
I think your question is perhaps the cost associated
with the legal, correct,
yes,
on the account of legal fees, correct.
One sec. So during the period 2016 to 2022, where several of these matters were settled or ventilated in the courts, EMBD spent a total of $75 million on legal fees, and that is $75 million defending $1 billion in claims.
Of course, and and because I've heard,
and that $1 billion does not include interest or costs.
Correct.
So well imagine that it will get a significantly higher sum.
And I've heard the PS for Agriculture in her opening statements, and several speakers. You would have to agree with me that this has placed, of course, this litigation, which this board would have inherited, would have placed a significant financial burden on your operations.
Definitely, and by extension, all of these cost associated in defending these litigation is carried by the taxpayer by extension.
Correct, and that is why I'm asking the question. As a taxpayer in Trinidad and Tobago for all of my working life, now, and as everybody else is in this room would be concerned, now for matters resolved. So I ask about the matters that you all would have inherited, right? So therefore, legal fees, again, just to reiterate, impacted on contingent liabilities of the company, and in turn, can you say that it results in a debt to the company? Would you refer to that as a debt to the company?
I think far too often we look at it as expenditure.
But it's a debt.
But it's actually a return. Okay. Because had you not spent $75 million, what would have been your exposure? $1 billion. And therefore, I would suggest to the committee that you do not see it as an expenditure, but you actually take it as a return on investment.
And not just a return on investment, but a return, well, in essence, for justice, to find monies that, or not just to find monies, but to definitely ensure that certain matters and claims are litigated, properly litigated, ventilated before the court. And of course, when we look at cost and so on, of course, that redound to the benefit of the company itself. So you're saying that, so we're looking at the amount of money that was spent in litigation. Subsequent to 2015, after those contracts were awarded, right? How much debt did EMBD inherit when the new board came into effect, owing to actions brought against EMBD by these contractors in these matters, some of these matters? Do you have a summary of that?
So I would first just like to respond to something you said earlier.
Yeah.
And obviously there may be alarm in the context of $75 million in legal fees.
Right.
The question is, as a percentage of the size of the claims, that's just about 7% we spent in defending successfully and settling.
So just to springboard out of that, to your mind as the chairman and the board, that is not wasted expenditure in litigating. You said it, but I just want, because again, you believe that by litigating, it's not a witch hunt. It's by litigating in a defense of taxpayers' dollars. Correct?
That's absolutely correct. And we do have a fiduciary duty to the organization and to the people of this country. And that is, if we believe that these matters should be ventilated through proper channels, we have taken the position that that is where it will go. We've also said, as a board and an organization, if there are opportunities to settle these matters
right,
and save cost and save the burden to the taxpayer, we will also pursue those pathways. And we've done both.
Of
in
course.
numerous instances.
Of course, and of course that is the prudent way to handle litigation matters. Then the other question, you were going to respond?
Yes. So you asked about what liabilities we would have inherited.
Yeah.
And therefore, in around 30th September, which would have been the close of the financial year in 2015, it's around $4 billion.
Okay. At page 7, part 2 of your submissions, so it's part 2 submissions, page 2. EMBD indicated that in addition to 10 matters which were ongoing prior to fiscal 2016, the EMBD has been engaged in 47 matters which include appeals. Again, can EMBD indicate how these legal matters have affected EMBD in achieving its mandate and responsibilities? Page 7, part 2 of your submissions.
Response to question 22.
Correct.
Yeah. Can you repeat?
Yeah, no problem. I just wanted you to indicate, so what it says here, in addition to 10 matters which were ongoing prior to fiscal 2016, the EMBD has been engaged in 47 matters, which includes appeal. I just want to know if you can indicate, for the benefit of the listening public and for this committee, how these legal matters have affected the EMBD in achieving its mandate and responsibilities. And no doubt, of course, that would go into cost again.
So, member, if I may, yes, it would. In terms of affected us in terms of getting the original mandate of the organization fulfilled. The majority of the litigation that is being faced at EMBD is in respect of contractor claims for monies allegedly due and owing for the development of certain infrastructural projects. As part of the litigation strategy, what has happened is that these infrastructural projects are largely on hold pending the outcome of these litigation.
Right.
So the large impact has been that these projects are on hold.
Okay. Page 9 of that same part 2, right? Page 9, part 2 of the submissions. EMBD has stated, EMBD has been defending these claims based on experienced legal advice from its external attorneys and technical advice from experienced quantity surveyors and engineering experts. Settling claims through negotiation, which you would have already alluded to, right? Court order withdrawal of claim by the contractor. Again, can EMBD identify the benefits taxpayers have derived from EMBD outsourcing said personnels? Because, and why I'm asking this is because you are the entity before us. And oftentimes in the public domain, that's one of the major concerns that the public would have whenever matters are being litigated, whenever we litigate matters. Because of course you have the cost to outsource lawyers, senior counsels. You may, in matters such as this, most of your matters that you, as you would have alluded to, is based on contracts and the unfulfillment of contracts, which you will need quantity surveyors, you would need specialists, all right? But I think it's critical, because at the end of the day, many of us are politicians here. It's critical for the entity to be able to identify for the benefit of the public, to at least understand in the board's opinion and the entity's opinion, if you can identify the benefits the taxpayers have derived from EMBD outsourcing said specialist persons. So for example, the quantity surveyors, the engineering experts, the technical advice. Why outsourcing and spending taxpayers' dollars in outsourcing said persons would have been critical to your litigation? And then that being established, if you can be able to speak to our taxpayers and indicate what benefit could be derived from outsourcing said persons.
Sure. Thank you, member. So again, first I will quantify.
Correct.
By repeating what I've said before, and that is by return on spend for legal and expert fees, we have saved $620 million. But I will go further, because had certain matters not go before the court, there would not have been certain findings of fact, and therefore it could have been left in the public domain as political banter. And therefore I would like to direct the committee to several things. In specific one matter, there was a reduction in the claim by the court, and that reduction amounted to, by a certain sum claimed by a contractor. And let me preface this. I struggle to understand, if you sue for $1 billion and the court says you're not getting your billion, how can that possibly be a victory? You did not prove your claim. That's my opinion. But in specific to one matter, Justice Rahim ordered damages to be paid to a certain contractor, and that sum reduced the contractor's claim by 50%, and that 50% was almost $477 million. So
that was
to answer your question,
right.
Well, the public is asking about these expenditure for legal, but you have to appreciate what the court has been determining in the interest of the taxpayer. The second thing some of these matters have done, in one of these matters, was finding of unlawful means conspiracy. And I'm just going to paraphrase here. One of the main findings was that there was an unlawful means conspiracy with regard to EMBD personnel, the former, I prefer not to call the person name.
Of course.
The contractor and the engineer. This is an important milestone in respect to litigation between a private contractor engaged to provide construction services to a state enterprise in Trinidad. Specifically, there was the setting aside of certain agreements with the court determining was by way of an unlawful means conspiracy. The court therefore found that the supplementary agreements were invalidated by the acts of an unlawful means conspiracy on the part of the contractor and ex-EMBD employee. Those supplementary agreements resulted in an increase in the value of projects of the combined total of $314 million, $406,886. and by virtue of the finding of the conspiracy, the agreements were declared to be null and void and were set aside.
Right.
So there's been findings by the court never before, and therefore I think several of our litigation proceedings have allowed the law and I guess the ambit of the legal profession to have in our records the existence of these acts.
And you would have to agree with me in some of those matters. Let's say money was not expended on those specialists or outsourcing quality attorneys to represent the company. You may not have even had this fighting chance.
Absolutely, and just remember this specific that I quote.
So there's justification.
As far as our information suggests, this was the largest claim ever filed in the High Court.
So to your mind, there's justification for the monies that have been expended in litigating these matters, especially when you look at what would have come out, dicta that would have perhaps emerged from the court, as you would have alluded to, when we look at reduction in claims. So just for the benefit of the listening public, very simply put, you have a contractor claiming $1 million in damages. You go to the court says, no, you're not entitled based on your claims. We have that reduction in a claim to, let's say, $500,000. So that in essence, would, to your mind, as the board, justify the expenditure in litigating these matters, correct? Now, in I want to take you now to page 18, part 1 of your submissions. And this is specifically with respect to the award of contracts. And again, I am focusing just on what is before the committee, right? In response to the question was, does EMBD submit to the Minister of Finance within 14 days following the end of each month a list of all contracts which were awarded during the month, together with the value of each contract? And EMBD stated EMBD is current and up to date in submissions of return of award of contracts to the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance. My question is, before the EMBD provides said information to the relevant ministry, can EMBD explain to the listening public, and of course to the benefit of this committee, how the process of award of contracts for the period currently under review, and that's that 2015 period, how that was executed?
Yes, member. So what I can say that there are two categories of reporting that's done. Return of award of contracts for contracts that are under 5 million and over 5 million. For the period 2016 onwards, unlike previous periods where there would have been several multi-million-dollar infrastructural awards done, since 2016 to present, there have been no contracts, save and except possibly one, that would have amounted to that quantum. With respect to the lower round contracts, the usual process would be that you would have a three-tiered process. So for instance, it may be a sole select contract that's made and justification for it. All contracts right now are approved. There's a internal approved financial authority in the tenders policy. Contracts up to 100,000 is approved by the CEO. Between 100,000 to 2 million is with the tenders committee, and over 2 million is with respect to the board.
With respect to 2016, correct, in moving forward, but I'm asking about the process before.
Before 2015, what we would have found is that there was a similar type process in terms of sole select or selective tender award of contracts. And there have been some instances that is ventilated in our legal matters where the process was not properly followed. For instance, the supplementary agreements that were, my chairman would have alluded to. The process that was allowed to happen in that case was that the CEO unilaterally entered into these supplementary agreements without the requisite tender or board approval at the time.
Can you give me an example of certain instances or examples that you all would have encountered as a board when you got into, when you took the mantle, which, and I think that's important for the committee to understand, where you have, because you said a CEO is unilaterally making a decision as it relates to the award of contract, and the sums again, those unilateral decisions that it appears that were often made were for contracts in award. The award sum was approximately how much, and if you could give me an example and further.
So with respect to that particular scenario, the supplementary agreements that were entered into without the requisite tenders or board approval, it resulted in an increase in value of the project of $314 million, which would have exceeded in any event the original CO limit.
So in your, and since you all have taken mantle of the entity, how many other examples of that sole select unilateral decision being made relative to the award of contracts?
For the period 2016.
For the period that's before us, correct.
2013. We would have to, can we supply that, review the records in order
Especially because when you look at the procurement process that you're alluding to, it seems to be that a lot hinged upon a sole select process. And of course, I mean, in moving forward, I understand, well, you all would have stated EMBD is current and up to date in submissions of return of award contracts of the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance. That's in moving forward. But again, I'm dealing with what is before us, which of course covers that 2013 to 2015 period. And you would have alluded to the fact that at least since you all took control, you would have noticed that a lot of soul selecting would have been done. And certainly if examples or information to that effect could be provided in writing,
sure.
I will be grateful. One thing, Chair, can I continue? I want to take you now to Appendix 2 and Appendix 1 of documents, in your submissions dated the 27th of January 2023, right? Let's go to Appendix 2 firstly. I mean, in a past incarnation, this is what I did for a living. So I mean, going through evidence, and I noticed that an Anil Rampasad, I mean, there are pages of Anil Rampasad starring here, and thousands of dollars paid to Anil Rampasad. It appears from what I'm looking at here, I mean, I want to bolster this question because I don't want it to be, I don't want to inflame the question, but I know that the Permanent Secretary for Ministry of Agriculture, she mentioned that EMBDs, which we all understand, mandate is to engage in further purposeful and infrastructural work. PS would have also mentioned several sites that fell under the purview of EMBD, right? The 7 sites. But then when I go through these financials, when I go through the Appendix 2 in particular, and I'm seeing, okay, so for example, Anil Rampasad payment for the month of October as stated in contract, Anil Rampasad extra hours at the official opening of Golconda interchange, and there's a sum paid to him. Then we have extra hours, 18 extra hours with Line Minister Dr. Rudal Munilal with EMBD officials, and then you have the sum being paid to Anil Rampasad there. Then if you go to page, let's say if you go to page 3, for example, you see statements with Anil Rampasad starring again. You go to page 4 of that appendix. We have several sums paid to Anil Rampasad. I'm just going through the documents, and I want to know if you have any information relative to this person's core function. To my mind, it's a lot, and I have to give way to other members, but if you go through the things that he's paid, that this person was hired for, and that's why I started by mentioning when PS for Agriculture spoke about what the general mandate of EMBD is. To my mind, nothing that he's engaged in is relative to the mandate of EMBD. So, for example, I saw that. Well, I'll get into that one. That's Caribbean Print Technologies. As we're on that, for example, not Caribbean Print Technology, sorry. We have the purchasing of gold hats, yellow gold hats, expenditure spent on that. Then there's expenditure on a lot of flyers and the timing of it is like, for example, the 1st of the 7th, 2015, a lot of money invested in, to my mind, what appears non-EMBD related. And there are pages of it, Appendix 1, Appendix 2. Would you be able to add some clarity at all on that expenditure? The monies that were expended, how is it related or justified at all based on your findings? It's not fair. I know that you all are new. Well, when I say new, you would not have been here at that time. But this type of expenditure, how is it related to EMBD's activities? Of course, it's a lot to go through, and I would have just itemized a few. But perhaps if I can get some, because I want to just understand, where, at least in understanding where the taxpayers' dollars went.
Thank you, member, and I will defer to Chair. Chair.
So from our information, the individual is a photographer. And from our interpretation, several of the engagements he participated in and which EMBD paid for is not part of our core function or mandate.
Repeat, that was not part of your core function?
Yes.
Because he's also on retainer for $6,000 every month.
He was.
He was on retainer. And then added to that, there's an extensive amount of money that is spent for several outside of EMBD functions, correct?
That's accurate based on the records, what they reflect.
Is it fair to say that? Okay. Thank you very much. ABC Dynamic Trading Limited, it's on page 9 of Appendix 2. I see 16 golden yellow caps, and there is the substantial amount of money spent on that. And then there's Daily News Limited. This is on the 9th of the 9th, 2015, mind you, expenditure on that day. And there's another expenditure on 9th of the 9th, 2015, Daily News Limited, full color out, 33/7. We have moved advertisement, $16,000 plus. Would that have been aligned with EMBD's mandate and responsibility? Would that have been aligned with EMBD's core functions? It's on page 9.
Based on the submissions, that there was an advertisement for the relocation of EMBD offices.
But the yellow caps,
the
yellow golden caps, and the money is spent on the 9th of the 9th, 2015, no? Okay. If I can go to, Anil Rampasad is starring again here, so, and thank you for providing the information relative to Mr. Rampasad. Chair, for now, I can give way to another member.
I asked my friend Laurel Zamali Singh to come in. Just wanted to ask a question. Mr. Parry had to leave, right? So he has a matter in South. So he has asked me if I could raise this question here. Mr. Mohammed, is it possible you can provide to this committee for the period 2016 to 2022 if you can provide a list of all the costs to local and foreign legal and other firms, legal firms, right, in relation to all matters that were at litigation. You don't have to give us that now. You can circulate that.
Chair, it's already in our submissions. I distinctly, and it's listed by attorney and by year. So it's in our submissions.
Okay, for the period?
For the period that you've asked.
Okay, cool. All right, well, Laurel Lizama Leasing.
Thank you very kindly, Chairman, members. Good morning again, or good afternoon rather. Chairman of EMBD, I want to thank you for your very comprehensive opening statement. On perusing these documents before this meeting, I had my grave concerns, and I do not wish to belabor the point, but I had grave concerns about Grant Thornton's disclaimer of opinion. I am very concerned still that the company has been, and this is no fault of yours, you've inherited this, that the company was unable to provide the supporting documentation and to substantiate certain matters. And I want to place on the record my grave concern for that. Reason being, this is the second successive meeting that we have found that there have been challenges with auditors and state enterprises, documents going missing, and might I say, and I cast no aspersions, but around the period of 2013, 14, 15. This is of grave concern to me, but I thank you for your very comprehensive statement. And I wish to thank as well your financial consultant for using the term documentation retention, and I look forward to more timely and comprehensive submissions coming from the EMBD based upon the action that you have taken, you have been forced to take, or you have chosen to take. I will get to your strategic plan very, very shortly, but I wish to ask though, EMBD has always fallen under the purview of the Ministry of Agriculture. No. What was the Lang Ministry prior? For the period under review. Yes, for the period under review. Ministry of Housing and Urban, yes, thank you.
Ministry of Housing.
The Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. Thank you. And had there been any intervention, to your knowledge, I know they are not here to answer, but from your research or based on information coming to you when you assumed chairmanship, or even you, Madam CEO, had there been any intervention by the then Lang Ministry insofar as the situation with the audited reports?
So from my recollection, in September 2015, there was the reassignment of EMBD to the Ministry of Agriculture. Yes. So I'm asking follow your question, yes, it relates to the Ministry of Housing.
Do you know? So I'm asking you if you know if there had been any intervention by the Lang Ministry during the period under review.
I'm unable to answer that question.
You can't answer that question. Okay, thank you very kindly. Chairman, I just have two brief questions to ask this committee. Sure. And the first one speaks to the strategic alliances with your Lang Ministry. And I want to focus on the area of quarrying. Can I ask you, please, if you can tell me the status of the regularization of the quarry operations? There must have been some issue with the quarries. And can you inform me how that was dealt with?
So if you permit me, member, we do have a comprehensive section on that aspect of our operation. And just by way of context, up to June 2017, our Coker Road quarry was operated by one Ramnarang Charles. And that arrangement was basically at a flat rental fee per month, with no accountability for extraction of volumes for materials taken off site. EMBD quarry operations were suspended from June 2017 to July 2020 after EMBD obtained all statutory approvals. The quarry was operated by EMBD from July 2020, whereby EMBD employed an operator to excavate, stockpile, and load, while sand is sold directly to the public by EMBD. EMBD has joined the Trinidad and Tobago Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. We have also had some challenges in the operations, and sales have not been as anticipated since the commencement or recommencement in July 2020 for the following reasons: excessive inclement weather, economic conditions during the pandemic and reduced demands, COVID closure from March 29 to April 26, 2020, May 10, 2021 to 6 July 2021, closure of the quarry from 16 December 2021 to 10 October 2021 to investigate certain matters, the reduction in mining area due to buffer restrictions and reduced availability of materials, and also competition from illegal quarries. What I'm pleased to report is that EMBD is up to date with royalty payments and to date has paid in excess of $1.5 million in royalties to the state. Would you like more details?
Thank you very much for that answer. I did hear you speak about the extractive industry in your opening remarks. I wanted to ask you if EMBD, given all of these challenges that you would have experienced, whether money, materials, COVID, etc., is EMBD satisfied that it's doing sufficient to progress in this field, in this sphere?
Thus far, from a commercial viability standpoint, yes, we have done well.
Okay, thank you. Now I want to go to this document from Grant Thornton, and I wish to turn to page 8. The cash flows for the year ending September 30th, 2015. Yes? Okay, thank you. Under your cash flows from financing activities, you have a demand loan. That demand loan is what you spoke about with FCB in your opening remarks, yes?
That's correct.
Yes, can you explain to me what the demand loan was for, the purpose of that? And then also, if you would also explain the proceeds from the grant funding. I'm not sure that I saw the detailed breakdown of that anywhere in this document. Thank you. Just the two items under cash flows from financing activities.
Just by way of information, the $400 million related to a loan at First Citizens Bank. It was a 4-year tenure, and the rate was 4% interest, and the loan date was August 2015. Those.
Again, I missed that. Sorry.
The August loan of 2015.
Or the date of the loan.
Yes.
Is August 2015. Okay.
And we can confirm that upon receipt of the loan and during the period 17th of August to the 22nd of September
of 2015?
Of 2015, the sums dispersed in excess of and including the loan sum amounted to $418 million. Basically within 1 month.
Thank you very kindly. And do you know what the sums were dispersed for?
Payables to contractors.
Thank you. And now I just want to ask you quickly about your strategic plan, and this is to the ministry. And is it correct that the Ministry of Finance is still to approve the strategic plan.
So, in respect, member, if I may, in respect of the strategic plan for the period 2020 to 2022, EMBD has received comments from the Ministry of Finance on that strategic plan, and we are preparing the strategic plan for 2023 to 2025 right currently.
And do you have a time frame that you think?
We believe it will be completed by the end of the second quarter of 2023.
Okay, thank you very kindly for that. Thank you, Chairman. That ends my first set of questioning. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Chair. May I first compliment EMBD on the fact that you have been able to answer quite comprehensively all questions being asked, which means that you are quite prepared. But for me, I want to just shift gears slightly. And we have been dealing with a lot of the financial issues. But part of the submission has spoken to challenges experienced. And I note that from a governance perspective, one of those challenges is or resides around internal policies and processes and procedures and stuff. And we got feedback that it is ongoing. Now, ongoing could mean a whole lot of different things. So in relation to when this report was written and what we are looking at, how has EMBD progressed in getting and establishing those policies, procedures, whether it's procurement, human resources, whatever it is? Where are you now with those items?
Remember, I'm assuming you're referring to page 23 of
Yes.
our Part 1 submission?
23, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Member, what I can indicate, as my chairman would have stated previously, is that EMBD right now is constrained in terms of limited in-house resourcing, there being only 5 senior members of management. What we've done is we have tried in order of priority in terms of the outstanding policies and procedures. What we've had is that, for instance, the HSC policy has been approved, electronic banking policy that has been approved as well, which was very, very useful in terms of addressing electronic during the period of COVID. So there is a priority that's being made in terms of the outstanding policies and procedures with timelines to be ascribed for completion per quarter.
Okay, just to close by saying, one of the shortfalls we see all the time is we have no benchmarks to go on because there are no policies. And then people get around the issue of not being able to perform because there's no written policies and therefore governance kind of goes out the window and it becomes a root cause. So I would just encourage EMBD, even if you need to outsource that, to have your I's dotted and your T's crossed and create those basic benchmarks that people will have to follow.
Noted. And just for the record, though, we would like to say that it's not a case of no policies being approved. EMBD would have supplied, we do have a HR manual, we do have a tenders policy. So, but the point is noted from the member.
May I ask a few questions before I ask my colleagues to continue? As it relates to, I think, Mr. Mohammed, you said that you have 32 employees. Am I right? What percentage are on contract? What percentage permanent?
The entire workforce is contracted.
Do you have an organizational structure?
Yes, we do, and I believe it's part of our submissions.
Okay. Now, is it the policy of the company to maintain? Do you have a pension plan for those employees?
No, but as far as I'm aware, there are provisions for gratuities at the end of service.
Is there any intention of having a permanent cadre, or do you think that the company will continue along this contractual arrangement? And has it always been like that? Did you inherit that, or was that a policy that the company has decided to pursue?
That's something we inherited, Chair, and obviously the board would be guided by the Ministry of Finance or the CPO in terms of what type of employment we can offer. Thus far, we've not received any mandate, as far as I'm aware, from Line Ministry or any others, that we should commence permanent employment in our workforce.
But, all right, okay, I'll come back. In terms of your internal auditor, how long has EMBD has been without an internal auditor?
Chair, can you repeat the question, please?
No, I'm asking how long. First of all, do you have an internal auditor in the EMBD? First of all.
May I, Chair? Our last internal auditor, her contract expired in 2021. Thereafter, we pursued hiring to fill the position of internal audit manager because it was quite competitive in terms of compensation. We redesigned the job function to compete with the rest of the state enterprises, etc., and public and private sector.
Wait. Hold on. You're still competing with state enterprise. Now, as I recall, there's a state enterprise performance manual.
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yes.
And one of the guidelines is that you must have an internal auditor.
Yes.
I never came across the concept, and tell me if I'm hearing you correctly. Is it you just said that you have an internal auditor / manager? Is that what I heard? I'm just trying to clarify.
Yes, we have.
No, but why are you? Is that a post that you are telling us exists in other state enterprises? So you're trying to be competitive? I'm trying to clarify again.
Okay, we are trying to compete because our internal auditor position carried a compensation that was not competitive with other internal auditors.
Okay. So what is the position now of the internal auditor?
Okay. The last contract expired in 2021. Mm-hmm. Since then, we have been trying to resource the department. In 2021, we selected through an interview process, our recruitment process, we selected the candidate that ranked number 1, And when that offer was made, it was turned down as the person had accepted another lucrative offer. Thereafter, we went to this second ranking candidate who required 3 months' notice to the employer. We waited for that 3 months. In 2022, in April, we anticipated that that person would have taken up the job. Regretfully, it did not pan out to be like we expected. Thereafter, we immediately started the recruitment process all over again, even going to getting support from the Institute of Internal Audit, Trinidad and Tobago, where they supported us in publishing our ad for their membership. That was unsuccessful also. We have done through different platforms and media, social pages, etc. We eventually, I must say, we're happy to say today that we are going to have we anticipate having a fully operational department by mid-April 2023.
Is it that you have been able to recruit as we speak, internal auditor?
Yes.
Okay, and when did you accomplish that?
We accomplished that between January and February 2023.
Okay. All right, I know that one of your mandates is, as I think the permanent secretary had indicated, is to deal with the provision of residential lots for, I think, former colony workers, agricultural lots, etc. Can you share with this committee where have you reached with that process, particularly between 2016 to the present time? Have you been able to sustain that process, or are you lagging? And could you provide to this committee how many residential lots, agricultural lots? I think, Mr. Mohammed, you talk about food security, or somebody mentioned food security as it relates to the agricultural lots. Can you share with this committee and give us a little breakdown as to how many you have distributed residential lots between 2016 to the present time? How many agricultural lots have been given out between that said period, and how many remain outstanding?
Chair, just for the record, we do not distribute residential lots. We develop residential lots on behalf of another state agency.
Okay.
In relation to agricultural lots, unfortunately, I do not have it broken down by years, but I can speak to the fact that we have developed a total of
outstanding leases for our 7 agricultural estates.
So completed and leases issued for our 7 agricultural leases, 2,755. We have 115 outstanding subleases. We have 196 lots unallocated by Carnegie 1975 Limited. We have 68 plots which was surrendered to the Commissioner of State Lands. Now, as we go further down, and the breakdown of the 115 outstanding leases that I referred to, basically 47 of those are deceased workers and we're waiting their letters of administration from their estate. 34 of those is on hold because of access issues. 26 of those we're waiting documents from the tenants themselves, and 8 of those we are to deal with occupational and boundary point-out exercises or waiting registration. So that's the breakdown of the 115 that we have outstanding.
So in terms of residential and agricultural, if you talk about agricultural, are you combining both, Mr. Mohammed?
No, because our mandate specifically, we can only distribute leases for estates that we hold head leases for, of which we have 7 estates. which we issue subleases for 2-acre parcels.
Okay, and you say out of your mandate, you have about 160 outstanding, am I right?
115, out of which 47, again, we're waiting letters of administration, 26, again, for documentation from the tenants. So it's an insignificant sum in the context of the number that we've delivered.
And when you explained to us, when you said surrender, people, like somebody would have gotten a residential lease or agricultural lease, and they would have surrendered, because you mentioned some 68.
Yes.
Just explain that to us.
So, for example, the state may have required for power infrastructure or utilities or drainage or roadways. So there would have been a process that EMBD would have followed to issue deeds of surrender and reassign to those agencies that would have required it for national development.
Okay, so once you surrender, you have a process where you reassign people?
That is correct.
For these lots?
Yes.
Okay, so those 68 that have been surrendered, have you reassigned? And how many have you reassigned? How many remain outstanding as it relates to the 68?
Chair, I would
could you put
to
that in
revert in writing, yes, for
so like for
confirmation.
instance, how many have been surrendered? When we 68, fine.
Mm-hmm.
How many, for instance, have been reassigned out of the 68, and how many have actually, how many remain outstanding? So at least we will know out of the 68 that have been surrendered, those persons who did not access it, what is being done to have these things reassigned and replaced. So if you could put that in writing
yes,
for us.
We'll submit that to the
and
committee,
you could
Chair.
submit it and so on.
Yes.
I think my colleague, Mr. Keith Scotland, would like to say something, and then I come to Amrita, right? And then after we can go to Laura. Mr. Keith Scotland, please.
Chairman, what is the status of the ongoing legal? What is the status of ongoing legal proceedings relative to alleged claims for? And we've seen substantial monies due and owing to contractors or consultants for works performed prior to 2016. Could you tell us?
Remember, unfortunately, we cannot give very specific particulars because of where those matters are before
Could you
the
give
court.
us at least a report, not today, but in writing relative to that? Chairman, through you, at least a more up-to-date one. Can you do that, and can you commit to do that? But I have another question for you.
And just, sorry to interrupt, just for clarity, in terms of the update that you're seeking, where is it in the litigation process?
Yes, please.
Sure.
But tell me, have you, and has the organization, maybe you can speak to legal and your team, has there been any savings derived from negotiations with contractors? I see the amount claimed, there's substantial amount claims. Has EMBD derived any value added as it relates to savings from the interaction with these contractors? And what is the quantum, if so?
Before Mr. Ronnie Mohammed responds, Mr. Scott, I don't know if you were in the building at the time. I know you had to be in and out, but I know my honorable friend did go into extensive details
I
on
heard some of the
savings,
questions, Mr. Chair.
and Mr. Mohammed responded, unless, for instance, Mr. Mohammed, you know, I'm a Democrat. I have no difficulty in you repeating yourself.
No,
but I know that you
want-
did. I know you did go into some detail. I know that we are rushing towards one. So I just wanted to tell Mr. Scotland that you would have answered that already. But I am prepared to allow Mr. Mohammed to at least repeat himself for purposes of
Chairman,
just clarifying.
if it has been answered, I have another if it has been answered, the actual amount has been saved relative to the interaction with contractors. Have you given us that amount?
Remember what I can say, I give a global figure in terms of the savings derived. Now, what I can say, a significant portion of the $620 million savings that we've been able to achieve would have been by way of negotiations. And for example, for example, we've had certain claims where we were able to negotiate up to 50, 60, 70% of the claim sums and proceed on settlement. But if you do permit me, the question about fees and your colleague asked about the outsourcing of it. But I would just like the record to reflect that in one specific matter, for $170 million, which the court dismissed, that was managed by my in-house legal team. So it's not that we simply go out. We look at what we can do as far as possible internally to ensure that those expenditures do not leave the organization.
Chairman, I would give way because I know time is of the essence, and I will let my other colleagues. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, through you, this is not directed at any particular individual in the room right now, but I have to say that I am very concerned that we have state enterprises coming before us, before this Public Accounts Enterprise Committee. Committee member Sagram Singh Suklal and also Mrs. Lazama Lee Singh also alluded and drilled down to some facts with respect to contracts being awarded to specific individuals that had nothing to do with the mandate of the company and whatnot. And I think that this is something of grave concern because, Mr. Chair, we have the Ministry of Finance Investments Division, who is the overarching institution that has oversight over all these state enterprises. So my question is, for the period 2013 to 2015, when all these documents went missing, all these procurements took place, what exactly was the role of Investments Division in Ministry of Finance? Because from my understanding, through you, Chair, is that according to the State Enterprise Performance Monitoring Manual, there are documents that must be submitted by each state enterprise. For example, internal audit reports, return of award of contracts, quarterly status of loans overdrafts, quarterly returns report, monthly cash statements. So I am not entirely sure how much we can rely and say, this board wasn't here, so we don't know what really happened during then, but the most that we could say is that, X, Y, and Z. I have to say that I am concerned, and I would like to give the Ministry of Finance an opportunity to explain not only to the EMBD, but also to the members of this committee, and also to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, what exactly are their position when it comes to continuity when board members change?
In response to, in terms of the reports that were submitted, I don't have that information at this point in time. We will research it and we can provide that information at a later date. But I know that the Investments Division does get, and we have been getting, the reports that are required under the monitoring manual. Additionally, the Ministry of Finance did recognize that there are issues with internal audit and audit in general. And in 2020, Corporation Seoul issued a circular mandating that all state enterprises establish the internal audit function. We also reiterated that this is a mandate under the State Enterprises Monitoring Manual. And one of the things that we stated in that particular circular, and I'll just read it quickly for you, and this shows the importance that we place on audit and internal auditing, is that, and I quote, the audit committee is supported by the internal auditor and relies on the work of internal audit. Evidence shows that an effective audit committee supported by an effective internal audit function results in strong internal controls. The external auditor can also benefit from the work of the internal auditor. Therefore, in the interest of good governance, all state enterprises are required to have an operating audit function and an effective audit committee. End of quote. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, may I, through you, ask a follow-up question? Chair, I am still not clear of the answer, because under the State Enterprise Performance Monitoring Manual, there is a specific function with respect to business continuity as a key function in risk management of State Enterprise Performance Manual. I am sorry, but I cannot accept that the Ministry of Finance is not able to answer the question with respect to what exactly, what reports were and were not submitted to the Ministry of Finance between 2013 and 2015, because that is the period in which we are examining at present. Now, if I am to narrow in under the Performance Monitoring Manual, it states clearly here that the monitoring and evaluation function of internal controls of the Ministry of Finance deals with evaluating internal control processes, evaluating and analyzing the procedures and practices relating to procurement, keeping under the review of performance and effectiveness of internal control systems, knowing that appropriate arrangements are in place to promote economy, efficiency, and effectiveness with state enterprises. Performing investigations are required by the Minister of Finance. So I am trying to understand if these issues were being identified subsequent to 2015, when these challenges were initially encountered, why the Ministry of Finance was not able to interject and assist almost immediately, so that we are not in a position where this audit has been dragged out for almost 4 years. Because, Mr. Chair, what we have here is a disclaimer of opinion coming from Grant Thornton. And this disclaimer of opinion is basically saying that, well, we didn't have enough documentation. So therefore, we have to issue this disclaimer of opinion because we weren't able to accurately reflect or gather everything with respect to the 2015 financial accounts. And then we are here today, and I am not too sure how much money has been spent, but I heard discussions of monies being tied up in litigation. I saw in the same audit report that there is loans, unconditional loans, that are being taken to settle these litigation matters. And at this point, to this day, as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, I have no idea what happened or how this money is being spent. So Mr. Chair, I think this is unacceptable, and I think it needs a thorough explanation from the Ministry of Finance.
Indicate that the role of the Ministry of Finance, this is a general statement I'm about to make. A state enterprise like EMBD or any other state enterprise does not operate on its own. It is governed by the Companies Act of the Republic of TNT, with severe consequences for directors. It is also guided by the State Enterprise Performance Manual. I have to support my colleague, Senator Dionorai, that the Ministry of Finance Investments Division had adequate notice of this meeting. We know the kind of challenges faced by the EMBD. You would have known about that, and say you, the Ministry of Finance. And I find it quite intolerable for us to be told this afternoon, that you have to, that is the Deputy Permanent Secretary, has to go back and research a matter involving what we have been told this morning and into this afternoon, challenges being faced by this state enterprise. Documents cannot be located according to submissions. And from the State Enterprise Manual, many of these documents are supposed to be submitted to the Ministry of Finance Investments Division. I dare say some will have to be submitted to the line ministry. So how come in 2023 we are not getting satisfactory answers from those oversight and monitoring agencies and ministries like the Ministry of Finance? So the system is broken. The system is broken because there is the EMBD has come and stated its case. We have to look at it as a committee. But we would have expected some answers, some guidance, some information, some intelligence from the Ministry of Finance Investments Division, because you all have a very critical role in monitoring and having that oversight responsibility. So we cannot fold our arms and go home and say, listen, after so many years, we have no accounts, no financial audited accounts from the EMBD for 2016 right up to 2022. And as Mr. Ronnie Mohammed said, because of the circumstances facing that company, he cannot guarantee this committee when those accounts will come forward. So where are we? What are we to do as an agency of the Parliament as it relates to accountability? So I really want to share the views expressed by Senator Dionorai as it relates to the role of the Ministry of Finance and Investment Division. So I would like to ask the Deputy Permanent Secretary, how do you think we, at the level of the PAEC, can assist your division through maybe recommendations? Because it seems that there is some weaknesses there, and you may not be responsible, Mr. Deputy Permanent Secretary. It might be a systemic problem. It might be a process problem. It might be a human resource problem. Whatever it is, I would like you to be very open with this committee, because at the end of the day, we have a responsibility to improve the processes, improve the procedures, improve the systems, so we can have greater accountability for the taxpayers' dollar. So it's not to say it is anything directed at you personally. We don't deal with personalities here. We are dealing with systems. We are dealing with processes. And if there's an absence of human resources, let us know. So when we are formulating our recommendations for the submission to the Parliament, at least the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago would be aware of the challenges faced by the Ministry of Finance Investments Division. So I don't want anyone to take away or to leave here with any false impression that we are attacking the investments division, or we are attacking the deputy permanent secretary, or we are attacking the EMBD. We are here to help. We are here to find solutions to the challenges that are faced by all state enterprises. And if for some reason your ministry and that unit within the ministry have difficulties, have challenges, please bring it to the attention of our committee so we can help your investments division improve. That is all. So, Mr. Permanent Secretary, maybe you can tell us, the way forward. Yes, ma'am.
Right, so I don't want to leave this committee with the impression that the investment division has not been doing our monitoring. So over the period, I think what the DPS was saying we would have provided to the committee is the exact dates whether they had outstanding reports. But in our role of monitoring, when we pick up issues, whether it's through the reports, through board minutes, these are escalated to the higher authorities. And during the period under review, my colleague here could make mention that certain things were brought to the forefront of what was going on with the company, was highlighted, was escalated, and an audit was conducted. So I don't want to be remiss in thinking that we don't have the actual dates of outstanding reports, but work has been going on in the investment division on reviewing this company, and steps were taken during the period under review. So I'll just pass it on to Mr. Herbert.
Yes.
Oh, yes, we did do an audit on EMBD in terms of certain contracts that were highlighted to our attention. Also, when the company supplies a list or a return of award of contracts, they would supply that a contract was awarded to X company or X individual. However, they do not supply the documentation for that contract. So if documentation is missing from the company, you cannot say, okay, we would go to the Ministry of Finance and they would be able to fulfill or they would be able to supply the missing documentation for that contract. All we would have had is that contract was awarded to company X for Y amount on an X date. So we can give you that information, but we cannot fill in any missing documentation that the auditors may have been looking for.
Mr. Herbert, do you think the time has come through a recommendation that when any company, state enterprise, is submitting, let's say, awards of contract to your investment division, rather than give you this bare bone information, do you think the time has come where there ought to be a more detailed submission to you, to your unit, so that your unit would be more aware of what is taking place, so that in the instant of, let's say, documents being misplaced or lost or gone missing, at least your unit, because of the new approach that we are proposing or I'm suggesting, would be in a better position to highlight these things. So that when we come to a meeting like this, like this one rather, you would be in a better position to supply this committee with that kind of added information and or details.
Whereas it might be a good suggestion, the Ministry of Finance does not have the capacity to store all those documentation. So that is one constraint that we do have. We don't have the capacity for the storage of that type of documentation.
But you would agree with me, Mr. Herbert, we are now in the digital age. So we are not in the manual age any longer. So what I am saying is that maybe one of your recommendations could be what I have suggested, And therefore, we would also recommend a revolutionary transformation as it relates to electronic storage of very crucial data and details. So when we come here, we don't have to come with piles of documents, or we are not going to burden that investment division with piles of documents. It will be done electronically. So I don't know. I am trying to see to what extent we can put our heads together to avoid a repetition of what we are now experiencing.
Chairman, through you, may I ask, maybe we can ask the Ministry's Investment Division and EMBD to give us something in writing, outlining how they think the alliance can be improved in order to bring about a more efficient running and a more efficient synergy between the state enterprise and between the ministry. And maybe just assuage the public a little, they can give us because I know time is not our friend now, just say something. They can put it in writing, but they must have thought about it and tell us how they plan, through you, Chairman, to do that, or what they suggest can bring that change about, Chairman, through you.
I think the Deputy Permanent Secretary wanted to say something, sir?
Yes, tell us.
So we thank you for the recommendation and we accept it. And we look forward to working together with the committee. The Ministry of Finance, through the monitoring manual and the investments division, I just want to make it clear that we accept our roles and responsibility, and we continue to ensure that we monitor the entities as is required. So it is not that the Ministry of Finance Investments Division is seeking to shirk any of its responsibility. There may have been a bit of miscommunication, but...
We haven't suggested that, but we want to know how, give us very briefly, how do you think it can be improved? We want it in writing, Chair, please, within 2 weeks, but tell us, how do you think, let the public get some sense of rest that this is being addressed?
So there will be greater collaboration among the stakeholders, the line ministry, Ministry of Finance, and the EMBD in coming up with what are some future recommendations that we can have you.
I think what Mr. Scotland is proposing, Mr. Deputy Permanent Secretary, is that a meeting be held between the Ministry of Agriculture, or among, I should say, the three entities that are before us today.
Yes.
And within 2 weeks, submit to this committee recommendations arising out of our experiences today, so that we can use those recommendations as part of our submission to the Parliament as to how to improve the efficiency, the accountability, the efficacy, and the economy of the state enterprise sector in the Republic of TNT. And those units that are responsible for monitoring and having supervision over those state enterprises. I think that is the recommendation that my colleague is proposing, and I would like to ask that you all meet and submit this secretariat, and we have a secretariat here, our secretary is Kiba Jacob, and we can submit in writing in a fortnight. If you say you need more than 2 weeks, let us know. I'm suggesting in 2 weeks.
Chairman, the 2 weeks expresses the urgency of getting this together, and I'm sure the stakeholders would recognize that this is urgent, because we will have to answer to Parliament and also make a report and consider it.
Okay, well, I think that we have agreed
Chair,
on that.
thank you for that. Ms. Mohammed just wanted to say
Yes, Ms. Mohammed, yes.
I just want to say, currently, EMBD is up to date with all of their reporting in compliance with the monitoring manual. Yes. The systems we have in place currently is that while they send hard copies of the documents, it is also emailed to the ministry, and we also save it in our server. We have our databases. So there have been improvements from the period 2013 to 2015. And, well, I don't know what other improvements, because we have We have a relationship, a very cordial relationship with the company.
Mrs. Mohammed, may I interrupt you? I think the problem is simply this. We do not have before this committee any financial audited accounts for the period 2016 to 2022. That is the issue. So even though you get draft audited statements and the EMBD is up to mark, we are not up to mark. The people are not up to mark because there is no financial audited statements before this committee prior to what we are dealing with in 2015. So
Chairman,
that is the point I just
maybe
want to
Ms. Mohammed, maybe you misunderstood. Are you saying that the system is perfect, the synergy is perfect? No. So what we are suggesting, ma'am, hold on, what we are suggesting is that within 2 weeks, you have a meeting with the Director of Agriculture planning that division with EMBD, and come, because obviously there are some lacuna, there's a lacuna, and we just want you all to have that meeting, make a recommendation so this PAC could do its job. All right, and you don't need to be defensive. We are not at all attacking neither the ministry, nor EMBD, nor Ministry of Agriculture. We just want to better the system.
Exactly. I'm glad you emphasized that point,
Yes.
so that could sink in. I will now recognize my colleague, Mrs. Laurel Lezama.
Amrita just wants to make one comment.
Amrita and then Laurel.
Yeah, just one additional recommendation is that it may also be time that the Ministry of Finance sit and really look at how they how you all recommend these state enterprises save and manage their records in terms of records keeping, because that is a big issue. This is not happening with EMBD alone. It happened with many previous state enterprises. So it's a recurring problem that we need to make sure we have a handle on. So I will stop there.
Yes, Laura?
Thank you. No problem. You're welcome. Thank you, Chairman. I just want to go back to the period under review that we're looking at right now, which will be the audited financial statements of 2015. And so we know that Grant Thornton had put forward its own disclaimer, and even in the submissions from EMBD, I am minded to say that there is a disclaimer of sorts from the EMBD on the front page of all of your submissions, which says that EMBD's present management, who were largely not employed during the period, are mindful of the reporting obligation of EMBD to the committee. And as such, all efforts were made to compile and collate as comprehensive as possible responses to the committee's following questions. And so I'm very grateful for that, and I understand that you would not have been in the leadership seat during the period under review. I want to go back, and Senator Dionarang, Member Dionarang alluded to it where she talked about the loan and other, and I'm really very concerned about the demand loan that was taken in August of 2015. And I just want to ask, and I would have asked you before, but I want to ask because I want it on the record. Is the current board concerned about the disbursement of that loan?
We had grave concerns.
Yes, that just grave concerns. Is there any position that the board has taken insofar, at least in moving forward?
Yes, and there was part of our litigation portfolio and matters before the court includes the disbursement.
Oh, so it's before the courts, it's part of it. Yes, okay. And so might I just ask, is the board minded to be...
Yes, also sure. Add ACIB.
Oh, okay, thank you. So the board, therefore, in moving forward, will act differently. Am I to assume that the board will act differently insofar as the taking of a loan or the disbursement of a loan of this nature? I'm very concerned because $400 million is unimaginable to spend in a month and 5 days.
I can give the assurance that the board will act prudently,
yes,
and in the absolute best interests of our stakeholders.
Thank you. Thank you very kindly, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman.
I want to thank my colleagues. Just move in a short while. My colleague, who is right here with us. He has another committee meeting in a short while. On behalf of this committee, that is the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, we would like to sincerely thank our officials from the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, our colleagues out of the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, and our colleagues out of the Estate Management and Business Development Company for being here with us. We would like to allow you to be excused as we take a few seconds to put our meeting in some order so we can conclude our proceedings. So at this time, we'd like to thank you, and you are now excused. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You give them back this? Or
No, you keep it.
keep it? Yeah, keep it. It says
Really
paper.
quick with the online
Yeah,
version.
yeah.
But I wrote up all over mine. So
Sunday at 3.
Sunday at 3. Where?
Where we
You
meet?
have to
Let's
send me a
meet.
location and tell me
No,
where to
no,
meet.
let's meet.
Where is it?
It's in Straight. Don't
I
go
don't
up
know
there.
where Straight is. I'm
Go
not
up
afraid to
and-
drive anywhere in Trinidad. I'm not afraid. I go up to Fitzgerald Hines' office.